create a more resilient and prosperous society. We are privileged to begin our program with the reflection from some of our nation's esteemed leaders, and I urge everyone to participate actively in the sessions, drawing upon the incredible wealth of expertise in this room. As we embark on today's journey, let us draw strength and inspiration from the remarkable legacy of the ANC and its unwavering commitment to justice, solidarity, development. Let us honor that legacy by approaching today's discussions with boldness, creativity, and determination, and by translating our shared insights into impactful, sustainable solutions for the future. Once again, welcome at this event. I look forward to a day filled with innovative ideas, thoughtful debates, and decisive action towards the building of an inclusive, sustainable world we all envision. I thank you.
Thank you very much. May we please give the chair another round of applause. The treasurer. We will now call upon Dr. Gwen Ramokgopa, the chairperson of the Progressive Business Forum. As she comes, let me just introduce her properly. Firstly, I've known TG for a very long time. When we say TG, that's her new name. She is a medical doctor by profession. She has been in the health sector, twice MEC, the only MEC who has been twice in that position. She's a former Deputy Minister of Health. She is the first Treasurer General, first female Treasurer General of the ANC after more than 100 years of its existence. And I think for that you need to give a round of applause. She is befitting to lead this type of organization where we bring professionals together because she's an astute professional. She's been a chancellor of the Technology University of Tshwane. She is also involved with WHO and University of Pretoria. The list goes on. Because of time, I will not delve much, but I think it suffices to understand that you're talking to a professional of high note. Please welcome her. Give a round of applause.
Thank you very much, Ms. Omaira Chunara, the CEO of the Progressive Business Forum, and your core program director, Mr. Boy Ngubo, very eloquent and centered in terms of the knowledge of his area of work as well. I also would like to acknowledge the CEO of the Progressive Citizens Forum, Mayor Debbie Raputi, and the team that has been at the forefront of making this August occasion a success. I may as well mention Lerato, who has been central to communicating with most of you and also coordinating the various panel discussions online to better prepare for this engagement. I want to acknowledge members of the National Executive Committee, the Provincial Executive Committee, and all the structures of the African National Congress as we wish the ANC 113th birthday anniversary, a birthday anniversary of deep reflection of where we come from with our quest to build a better society where there is solidarity, equality, and indeed sustainable development. I want to also acknowledge all the other structures that are here from the Mass Democratic Movement. Most importantly, the ones I've mentioned are hosts together with me. We have amongst us to spend their precious time with us today to share with us, particularly in the context of the Government of National Unity, what their vision is in the best interest of our country, of our nation, and of her people on the various matters of critical conversations that we must have as a nation. Specifically, I would like to acknowledge Honorable Gwede Mantashe, the Minister of Minerals and Petroleum Resources, Minister of Energy and Electricity, Minister Dr. Khosientsho Ramokgopa, Minister of Education, Higher Education, Minister Dr. Nobuhleng Kabane, Minister of Trade and Industry, Honorable Minister Pax Tau. Those that I haven't put the DR before them, they still have a challenge. They must still, please don't give them honoraries. They say they want to achieve it themselves like these other two. But very experienced ministers in various perspectives. And my dear sister, the Minister of Transport, Honorable Minister Barbara Creecy, dear sister as well, Minister of Water and Sanitation, our one and only very energetic Minister Phemima Jodini. Her energy is very infectious. You can't but follow her. Thank you very much, Minister, for also coming and gracing us. We've also taken the opportunity of inviting the various international communities, and we're really honored that amongst us we have His Excellency, the Ambassador of China, and we also, I haven't met both of them, Excellency Ambassador of Russia, and we will acknowledge others as they come. I've taken liberty to invite a special guest amongst us, a lady who is a scientist, a lady who has not only transformed the talk about beneficiation of natural endowments, but has gone on to innovate, to research, and she is at the point of ensuring that the productions that have evolved out of those innovations are now at the stage of commercialization. This is none other than our Honorable Professor Muranga from the Republic of Uganda. Thank you very much for coming. I look forward to your sharing the journey of how far you have come. I've had an opportunity to be received by His Excellency, your President, and I asked him a very pertinent question. Why has Africa not benefited from its resources since the era of decolonization. He did refer me to some of the books that he has begun to write, and I'm glad that amongst his fellow citizens, there are scientists who are not just sitting back and saying we are educated, but that are making their education relevant to society. And that women are also involved, it is even more encouraging. Thank you very much for coming and sharing with us. We also have various businesses from South Africa, from Africa, and globally with us to share experiences of how do you move from poverty to development and also to a shared prosperity. We greatly acknowledge your presence. I also want to acknowledge the presence of professionals and academics, the producers of knowledge, led by the Minister of Higher Education. We need to bridge the gap between the knowledge and prosperity, and we hope we'll have an opportunity to do that today. Indeed, we have drawn the theme of this colloquium from the resumption of the presidency of G20 by South Africa. And that is why we've started with a video presenting the G20 presidency of South Africa to yourselves. As the President of South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa, has indicated, this is not his G20. He is presiding over the G20 on all our behalf. And this is an opportunity for South Africa and fraternal organizations and partners to ensure that we use and leverage G20 to advance our own nation building, advance our own transformation agenda as espoused by our constitution, and also towards a shared prosperity. We hope from these engagements, we will be able to submit to the G20 fora that are led by various ministers. And we're glad that Minister Tau, the Minister of Trade and Industry, will also be here because he is very much at the center of the coordinating team. I would also like to acknowledge that amongst us, we have professionals that have been supporting us, and we want to thank the PPF, the Progressive Professionals Forum, President, for gracing this occasion, and many other organizations that are here. You would know that we host this colloquium in the background of the 113th anniversary celebration of the African National Congress, which was founded by traditional leaders, by faith-based leaders, and also the middle strata at that time. We also know that women were involved, very much involved in the mobilization to try and engage what was evolving as what I would refer to as maybe now on reflection, if we have to take into consideration that the Freedom Charter now says South Africa belongs to all who live in it. It was some kind of beyond colonization, but also dispossession, and also creating a climate for a civil war. I want to acknowledge and single out, which I always do, because it's an inspiration that I hope we will share in resolving and innovating solutions for our problems. The role of the woman called Charlotte Maxeke. Charlotte Maxeke was inspired by the civil rights movement when she was studying for her BSc, and first South African woman to acquire a BSc degree. She was inspired to use her skills to advance her nation. She was there at the founding of the ANC, and even though women were not allowed to participate, she participated fully, and we informed that she was the only woman who spoke at that summit in 1912. What is even more profound is that immediately after, she ensured that there is a women's platform formed to also engage in the national dialogue. And what is important out of that is that the leaders of the ANC asked those women what they were doing may be considered as countering their efforts as a male-led ANC. And she said, no, President and the NEC then, we are not going to counter, we are going to reinforce what you're doing. And she said, this task is too big for men alone. So if we can emerge out of this summit with that inspiration, that the task of achieving solidarity, of achieving equality, of achieving a sustainable development with a shared prosperity is too big for government alone. It's too big for scientists alone. It's too big for business alone. It's too big for men alone. It's too big for women alone. It's too big for young people alone. If we can emerge just with that consensus and commit to be organized and to participate in organized formations. Fortunately, these days, there are digital platforms that that can enable us to participate optimally. The task is too big for us alone, and as the President leads us within the GNU, let us make the government of national unity work for us. That's what the 2024 elections brought within the context of democracy. Let us participate fully, because one of the commitments in the statement of intent is that we will have a national dialogue. We will take the outcome of this dialogue, colloquium, into that process as well of the national dialogue to make our country better, to build on the successes that we have gained together in the 30 years of our democracy, and indeed to be a proud member of platforms, multilateral platforms that are standing and mobilizing and contributing towards a peaceful, just, and a prosperous world. With those words, I want to encourage you to feel free to engage, and feel free to also find out beyond today, how can you contribute? South Africa, Africa are richly economically endowed. It needs our thoughts together, and together the task cannot be too big. Thank you.
Thank
I was given a note, and you could see that I thought they are saying 3 minutes left. But it's also a note to acknowledge amongst our international guests, Dr. Faisal Aranki, the leader of the Palestine Political Organization. And indeed, when we reflect on peace, we put the Middle East conflict and the people of Palestine in our hearts. Also, that Namibia, there is a delegation from Namibia also represented. And congratulations, you have a woman president. And we do recognize and acknowledge that men have women in them. And I think scientists like Professor Muranga will agree with me that as we have XX chromosomes, men have XY. So men should remember that this world also needs to accommodate women. We have too few women in leadership positions in critical institutions, and we want to indeed congratulate the people of Namibia with the election of the president and the election of all other leaders and presidents, lest I get into diplomatic difficulties. This year has been a year of national elections globally, and I think there was somewhere where I read it was more than 70 countries were going through national elections. Let democracy reign, but let it benefit the people, and let it be participatory, and let's advance solidarity, equality, and sustainable development that benefits all. Thank you.
I thank you very much, Dr. Ramkopa. I will not try to repeat anything that you said or try to summarize. Firstly, because she's a good narrator, and if I try to do it, I'm going to spoil everything. And secondly, because of time constraints. They say that some men, I'm not sure if women as well, have managed to live without love. But no one on earth has managed to live without water. Because water is very essential and basic to human life, to the environment. You cannot do anything without water. And I've got a prize, it's 1,000 rand if you can tell us that you can survive without water. With that in mind, we are going to call the most important minister that makes sure we are alive, that we survive. This is a matter of life or death for survival. Please help me welcome our Honorable Minister, another female, Umbokoto, very powerful, very strong, hardworking, and dedicated, committed. She will address us on the role of water and sanitation, fostering solidarity, equality, and sustainable development. Minister, you are welcome and thank you.
Anikwabanga. Program directors, thank you very much. TG, please allow me to stand on the established protocols because you've already acknowledged all those that are in attendance. Wonke umuntu olapha was supposed to be here. Those who are not here were not supposed to be here. So it is us here. I'm trying to look at all of you. You look beautiful and handsome because you are my clients. Can anyone who has not taken a bath, a shower, not brushed the teeth, raise the hand? I don't see any TG. It therefore confirm that you are all my clients. You all took a bath, you took a shower, you brushed your teeth. You went to the sanitation unit, you flushed. Because water is life, sanitation is dignity. Just a big round of applause for me. I've seen my colleagues here. I'm really honored to have been invited on this topic, the role of water and sanitation in fostering unity and sustainability in communities. All of you, you know this minister that was unable to say consciously. That is the only minister who trended. You don't remember any other person who was sworn in or took oath on that day except this one standing in front of you. Program directors, perhaps I must preface my brief remarks by making this bold and unequivocal assertion. Among the critical and immediate ways of assessing any society's commitment to equality is to look at the state of access to quality water and sanitation services by its different communities, as well as strides it is making to ensure that there is no one left behind. The program director said, there is no substitute for water. Myself and Minister Ramokgopa, we are in the same WhatsApp group. When he has challenges, I have challenges. When municipalities don't pay them, they don't pay me too. So we work together, we are partners in crime to ensure that we must deal with those who are owing us. TG, coming to this progressive business forum, where there is also progressive citizens forum, it is quite an important event. This organization, the African National Congress, cannot function without the support of the people that are in attendance here, led by the Progressive Business Forum. History is full of examples that demonstrate that lack of access to these basic services have the potential to plunge the nations into social instability. In our own country, access to clean water remains a struggle for many. Violent protests sparked by lack of water remind us not only that water is a precious resource and a fundamental human right, but also serve as a vivid reminder of the urgency to meet the basic needs and aspirations of all South Africans. Ladies and gentlemen, while more still needs to be done, I can state without any fear or contradiction that as a country, we've made remarkable progress since 1994 to expand access to clean water and sanitation, proceeding from the premise that access to water and sanitation is also a basic and a fundamental human right. We are determined to ensure progressive realization of this right. We'll never consider our freedom fully achieved until all South Africans are able to access adequate water and sanitation services. Consistent with sustainable development goals, our democratic government believes that access to safe water and dignified sanitation is the most human right that is needed for health and well-being. Despite challenges, we remain committed in ensuring universal access to safe and affordable drinking water for all by 2030. We are left with 5 years towards achieving this goal, but the challenge is growing because our communities are growing, the population is growing, economy is growing, it needs water. It is a noble goal that we seek to pursue with every fiber of our being as every available energy at our disposal. Program directors, water is life. Sanitation is dignity. I requested the president to change the name of this department. I must be called the Minister for Life and Dignity. Yeah, because when you say Minister of Water and Sanitation, hey, that side of sanitation does not taste good, eh? It's worse when you talk it in Xhosa. Umphathiswa wezelindle, ha! Athi ndihamba ndirhuqa isuwa. Water is a fundamental prerequisite, not only for health, but also for poverty reduction, food security, peace, and human rights, ecosystems, as well as education. Every aspect of our life depends on clean water, and all sectors of our economy depend on clean water to function and flourish. In short, there is no single economic sector that does not depend on water for optimal performance. But sadly, water availability has become extremely unpredictable in many regions of the world. Water scarcity is projected to increase with the rise of global temperature as well as climate change. In some parts of the globe, droughts as well as climate change have exacerbated water scarcity in a way that impacts negatively to people's health and threatens livelihoods and sustainable development worldwide. Thus, by managing our water sustainability, we also have to better manage our production of food and energy and contribute to decent work and economic growth. Across the globe, demand for water is rising exponentially owing to rapid population growth. Urbanization is increasing water needs from agriculture industry as well as energy sectors. In many parts of the world, demand for water has outpaced population growth, and half the world's population is already experiencing severe water scarcity. You will remember that South Africa is one of the top 30 countries that is water scarce. Hence, every time we make a call that let's use water sparingly. Currently, our water level is in the balance. The existing demands on a national scale, but there are localized deficits in some parts of our country. In Nelson Mandela Bay, 2015 to 2023, there was shortage of water. In Cape Town here, 2016 to 2018, there was shortage of water to an extent that we put them on day zero. Gauteng had a self-inflicted pain in terms of water. I know those who are coming from Gauteng, they might not like me very well, because I had to put Gauteng on restriction level 1 because I was trying to save them against themselves. What causes lack of water in Gauteng? Our dam balance in terms of water capacity, they're fine. We are currently maintaining the Lesotho Highlands water tunnel. We shut down the tunnel on the 1st of October to the 1st of March. And when we started that, everybody was worried that the country is going to collapse, we won't have water. We do have a lot of water in our storages. So we only release water from the reserves when the dam levels are at 18%. So if the journalists were here, they were going to get free update, because when they see the level going down to 30, they think we're in a crisis. I can assure you here, TG, ladies and gentlemen, our important guests here, that we don't have a crisis at the moment. We still have enough water, but we must ensure that we maintain our water resource as well as water infrastructure. eThekwini, I had to work on Christmas Day, go to eThekwini physically because we have put them on restriction level 1. But according to the international standard, we are supposed to consume 173 liters per capita per day. But in South Africa, we are consuming 218. That's abnormal. But when you go to eThekwini and Gauteng, they consume 289 liters per day per capita, and that's a problem. We have exhausted our abstraction policy. But in eThekwini, I had to intervene because the tourists were there. We're going to be accused of a country that is not taking care of the tourists who are also bringing economic growth. So we had to bend our policy a little bit to allow them to abstract more than they are doing. So we have given them up to end of January because we also wanted to be flexible and be accommodative. However, water availability in South Africa could deteriorate rapidly to supply contracts and demand which escalates on a daily basis. Population growth, urbanization, as well as physical losses, what we call non-revenue water. If you walk down the streets of our country, you walk together with water on the street. Water is not supposed to be on the street. Water must go to the tap. But once you see water on the street, you must know that that's a non-revenue water. And when you pump water, give to municipality, we charge them. Whether the water reached the community or not, it's none of our business. Our mandate as the Department of Water and Sanitation is that of abstracting water from the river, take the water to the dam, store the water in the dam, take the water to the water treatment plant. That is where our mandate ends. Xa ndingena apha wonke umuntu uthi asinamanzi, asinamanzi. Asinamanzi, harina metsi, hilaba mati. Hey, rinyoriwe, hauna metsi. And when they see Minister of Water, they see water in buckets. Yeah, and kubi manzi mna. The minister called babes yamanzi. Yeah, mnandi babes yamanzi. Yabona was ukause manzi na unaba mbi. You cannot be ugly. When you are in water, you must look spruce. Yabona utlowe kuse manzini. Hayi ndiqhobeleni. Because the mandate of this department is not well understood. We used to be water affairs. At that time, the water was with us as the department. But our government took a decision around 1998 to take the provision of water, provision to municipalities. That is where the problem is now. The provision of water is not the mandate of this department. The mandate of this department is to have a water resource, is to manage water resource, is to regulate norms and standards, is to monitor that, is to give bulk and potable water to municipalities. It ends there. From the water plant, municipalities must connect to their reservoir. From the reservoir to the water tap. As we are not in that space, there is a clear water value chain. And unless all South Africans understand that, be that as may, we do intervene in municipalities. At the moment, we have top 78 municipalities that are unable to provide water. Their infrastructure is decaying. They don't have capacity. They don't have engineers. I don't have anything against a teacher and a nurse, but you cannot employ a teacher and a nurse to be an engineer in water when they have not studied water engineering. That is what the challenge is. And at a cabinet level, we are trying to engage to say, because this is a constitutional mandate given to municipalities, how do we then come in and gradually pull that mandate back to the department? We no longer have a two-thirds majority. If we had a two-thirds majority, we're going to do that. When I was chief whip in the previous term, yeah, it's going to get about chief whip, yeah? The one and the only who has finished the first woman, first chief whip in the country to finish a 5-year term. Round of applause. Ndim lo, mna lo, me, myself and I finished the 5 term because I was deployed there. You know, when you're a chief whip, provincial treasurer, you become unpopular. Because you must subject people to toe the line. I get me and power. I hold on power. I hold on power. Even with ministers, I was very unpopular. When I three-line whip, I said, you must come to parliament. No, I have other. I said, who deployed you? You are deployed by the ANC. I represent the ANC here. When a person comes saying, no, I'm the member of the ANC, NEC. I'm the member of the NWC. I said, I'm also part of that. But here, Tunyom Nandotwa. Yeah, I figure there are 14 major national water infrastructure projects that we are currently busy with because we want to ensure that we provide enough water resource. 42 billion for Lesotho Highlands, 28 billion for Umkomazi River in KwaZulu-Natal because the population is growing. So we must also make sure that we up our game. 6.5 billion on raising of the Clan Williams Dam here in Western Cape, as well as 750 million raising the Zanin Dam. We will be hosting, on behalf of the African Union, we'll be hosting the Africa Water Investment Summit, which is a build-up towards the G20 summit. So we'll be hosting that on behalf of the AU. We told AU that we're not going to fail them. We're going to host it as we did with the 2010. South Africa hosted the 2010 Soccer World Cup on behalf of this continent. Now it is this South Africa that will be hosting the G20 on behalf of the continent. And ladies and gentlemen, it is also important that I explain that as long as we don't give attention to the following, we are crying for urgent action, which include water losses, old and aging infrastructure, illegal connections, illegal mining. Those zamazamas, so-called zamazamas, they use a lot of our water. Servitude, encroachment, devastating impact of climate change, vandalism, lack of enforcement of bylaws by municipalities, where you'll see a range of water of car washes in town. No, they are not even metered. Who then pays for that water? Nobody pays for that water. Hence, our municipalities are running bankrupt. Hence, our water boards are owed. Hence, Honorable Sputa is also owed. So we also want to urge for partnership with the private sector, partnership with the NGOs and NPOs to say, let's work together, let's save our country. Prime Director, as I round off, it is important that we know that the Department of Water, as I've said, that we give support to municipalities. And as government, we are painfully aware that inadequate infrastructure is holding back the provision of water and sanitation. Thank you very much for your attention. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, our Minister of Water, the Nerisha. I would like to just acknowledge our other ambassadors that we couldn't acknowledge earlier on. It's an ambassador from Egypt and from Vietnam. Please give them a round of applause. A very warm welcome, sir. I would now like to call upon Mr. Kashim Wickham to just very briefly come and give us a message of support. And as he finishes, I will be asking the Minister of Electricity to come in and give us an address.
I'm going to try and save you time. See, I'm already under the clock. Good morning, everybody. Ministers, patriots, colleagues, all protocols observed. I'm going to make 3 calls to action, and I want you to track me on this. In 1994, with our peaceful transition to democracy and building and establishing a non-racial, non-sexist, free and fair South Africa, under the leadership then of our founding president and the president of the African National Congress, Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, South Africa occupied a moral high ground and was a moral superpower globally. In 2023, when South Africa took Israel to the ICC, we then again occupied the moral high ground and became a moral superpower. Today, as we lead, or this year, as we lead the G20 Summit 2025, we call on our President Ramaphosa, to occupy the moral high ground and to push for the summit's goals of solidarity, equality, and sustainable development. The Progressive Professionals Forum and I personally have always believed that social justice, equality, combating poverty, combating unemployment, fighting climate change is not only a moral obligation, it is an economic necessity. A country's economy and a global economy cannot flourish if, according to World Bank data, 600 million people in sub-Saharan Africa does not have access to electricity. if according to the UN and UNICEF data, 57% of households in Mexico lack access to safely managed water supply, Minister, and 43% lack safe sanitation. If according to a World Bank report, China emits 27% of the global carbon dioxide and a third of the world's greenhouse gases, and we are pleased that China is committed to be carbon neutral by 2060. And so, as we quote only 3 examples to drive our point home, we believe that the theme of fostering solidarity, equality, and sustainable development is well-timed, well-received, and support for it must stretch beyond the confines of the G20 members and must become a global clarion call for all citizens and all countries on planet Earth to rally behind the theme solidarity. Governments, political parties, nations, and citizens of this world must set aside the man-made differentiators of race, gender, religion, class, nationality, and politics. We must suffocate and kill our desire to acquire more, control more, overpower more, take more, consume more, as there is no more left to take other than literally from the mouths of those who have no more to give, other than from those who do not have the power to resist. So our first call to action as a country and as the PPF, we call on the G20 members to implement the theme of solidarity, equality, and sustainable development. I will mention this all the time so it can be ingrained in our heads. Not only with pinhead focus, but to create and promote a global movement far beyond the confines of the 19 member states. On our South African government, to our politicians, and to the largest political party in South Africa, the African National Congress, who celebrated 130 years of existence this week on Wednesday, who delivered freedom to our people, who've governed for 30 years, who've ensured free and fair elections for 3 decades, who have accepted an election outcome within a government of national unity. We call on you to reclaim your space and place as a moral superpower, and we call on our President to lead G20 2025 to affirm solidarity as a key ingredient to economic growth. The second theme of sustainable development, patriots and colleagues, 2.2 billion people globally still lack safely managed drinking water. 675 million people still live in the dark. 4 out of that 5 live in sub-Saharan Africa. Many of the most vulnerable do not receive social protection. In low-income countries, only 23% of the elderly receive a pension. More than 600 million people are projected to face hunger by 2030. 1 in 4 young people are not in education, are not training, or are not working. Yet, in Africa, the country of our home, Africa has the largest reserves of cobalt, diamonds, platinum, and uranium in the world. Half the world's gold and 1/3 of the world's minerals are in Africa. The DRC supplies 63% of the world's cobalt production. Cobalt is that element that goes in all the batteries we have in our phones, in our laptops, in our iPads. Yet, in Africa, like we've mentioned before, 600 million people live in darkness. So as we call for the industrialization of Africa, as we call for the beneficiation of our resources not to be exported in its raw state, we call for that industrialization to be done in a way which is environmentally sensitive. Our third call to action, colleagues and TG, as I conclude, the majority of this audience today are not in government. We are not politicians. We will not have a direct seat or voice at the G20 summit, but we do lead control, and or influence the businesses we own or work at. As the PPF, the Progressive Professionals Forum, we've always maintained that the state on its own cannot address and remedy a country's challenges. It requires the public sector, the state, to work side by side with the private sector. It demands that the private sector must act beyond the confines of its own personal interest, beyond profits, at the expense of everything else. So what are we calling on the private sector to do? We're calling on the private sector to join the G20 states and all governments globally and implement the theme of solidarity and sustainable development. We call on you to do so as you embark on your expansion programs, as you embark on increasing your production and manufacturing facilities without the need to be policed and regulated. This requires self-regulation. So, in conclusion, as we fought the unjust and oppressive apartheid system, as we united as one people in a non-racial, non-sexist struggle, as we unselfishly gave all of ourselves for liberation, as we marched to freedom and delivered freedom to 50 million people in 1994, so we in business must join the G20's call and objective of solidarity, equality, and sustainable development by implementing the framework in our business. I want to quote the 1994 election slogan, Sekunjalo Kainako. Now is the time, because tomorrow is going to be too late. Thank you very much. Did I save your time?
Thank you very much. You know, I'm looking at the message I wrote here. And, okay, I'm going to say it in any case. We always said that Dr. Ramokgopa, we gave her a new name, Dr. Gwen Ramokgopa. We said she's a fixer, okay? And that's because when there was a crisis in health, Life Esidimeni, in Tshwane, and now in the ANC, when salaries were not paid, she comes to fix. But now I think it's a Ramokgopa thing, because when electricity we were in load shedding, they called another Ramokgopa to come and fix. So I'm calling upon another fixer to come on stage. Please welcome him. Dr. Ramokgopa, when I worked for Eskom, Eskom was one of the top 5 utilities in the world. It was the cheapest electricity producing company in the world. And we wore our T-shirts with pride in the shopping centers and we were greeted with smiles. During load shedding, you dare wear that T-shirt, you were in trouble. But because of you, I see Eskom employees starting to wear their T-shirts again. Please welcome Dr. Ramokgopa.
Thank you. I need this one.
Yes.
Yeah. No, thank you very much, Program Director. Let me stand on the existing protocols and also extend my warm and sincere greetings to everyone here in the room, in your eminence. TG, just to make the point that I've developed a habit when I go to occasions of this nature. And that helps me just to orientate my input, because I read the temperature in the room, what I call the mood in the room. And what I do is to use the scale of what we've become accustomed to in the country, that of load shedding. So when the mood is vibrant, the people are engaging, the people are attentive, essentially it's an electrified environment. It means that you are on stage 0. And when the mood is dampened, everyone looks sad. You are at stage 6. Before Minister Majodina came here, the room was at stage 6, and she managed to lift the mood at least to about stage 3. So hopefully when we finish, we'll be at stage 0 load shedding. So that talks to the interactive nature of the meet. Interactive, not necessarily a dialogue, but just an appreciation of some of the points that we're depositing from the platform. And maybe just to build on what Sis Shumera was saying about ESCOM, in 2001, ESCOM was voted the best electricity utility in the whole world. So I underline, in the whole world. So this is a remarkable institution that has demonstrated, if you like, the prolific ability to deliver on electricity to meet the demand, and in fact, it was powering much of the continent. And I'll say one or two things as I conclude about that. But maybe just to the topic, I think the theme of the G20 can be interpreted and also examined through the energy lens. So on the issue of sustainable development, I'm going to make the point here that one of the major limitations of the conversations around sustainable development, when it is discussed against the energy question, is that it's unidimensional. So the center of gravity in the conversation, it's about the impact on the environment, the ecological effects of greenhouse gas emissions. And in the course of that conversation, we neglect, abandon, or pay less, if you like, attention to the socio-economic impacts. So the point I'm making is that it has to be balanced, that conversation. Kashif makes the point that about 600 million people on the continent are still experiencing conditions of energy poverty. There is no country that industrialized whilst the lights are off. 150 years of electricity generation in the world, the exploitation of our natural endowments has helped the industrial north to achieve the kind of levels of industrialization they've achieved over time, the kind of upward economic and social mobility they've been able to attain. It's as a result of their ability to exploit their natural endowment. So if you like, sovereign interests are important in the conversation. And then the issues of equality, we also have the right ourselves as developing countries to super exploit our endowments. Just to put it into context, China in the first quarter of 2024 brought on stream 41 gigawatts of new coal generating capacity. India brought on board 15 gigawatts of new coal generation capacity. For you might not have an appreciation of the scale and proportions of these numbers. ESCOM generates about 48 gigawatts. Just in 1 year, first quarter of 2024, China brought 41 gigawatts of new coal generation capacity. What is the point I'm making? Is that we are talking of a mixed, we are not talking about one solution or energy technology over the other. It's not a binary conversation, so it's a whole conversation that needs to be entertained. And that's why if you like, the topic about harnessing energy diversity is important, because we're talking of a mix. We're not just talking of one technology over the other. And the ability of this exploitation of our natural endowments to achieve the nation's unity and also prosperity. I'll say one or two things about that. And then the issue of solidarity. So when you go to the platform of the COP, so there's an appreciation that greenhouse gas emissions don't respect political boundaries, administrative boundaries. So the atmosphere is just one unified space. So what happens in the industrial north has got implications to what happens in the developing south. So it's important that there has to be a coordinated conversation by these powers to ensure that our efforts collectively result in the average temperature not exceeding 1.5% growth in terms relative to pre-industrial levels. That's the target that we have set for ourselves. And I'm saying that it's important that you coordinate this conversation so that there must be symmetry and congruency in how we are going to respond to the challenges of climate change. So we know that in science, there is a correlation between greenhouse gas emissions and occurrences, the frequent occurrences of extreme weather patterns in the world. So we see the kind of devastation that is visiting some of our provinces, principally KZN. So I think we bear the responsibility of ensuring that we work together. You have seen now the fires in Los Angeles, and we can mention a number of those extreme weather conditions. So it calls for a more coordinated approach. And that coordinated approach, in English, they say our efforts must be solidaristic. So essentially, we must ensure that we pressure solidarity and found a common purpose, a common agenda, a unified agenda to resolve these questions going forward. I'm just going to do about 4 slides on what is it that we are doing in the country so that I'm able to reconcile, if you like, the topic with the efforts that we are making. So the point I want to make, the bigger point, is that I think we have missed an opportunity to have a much broader conversation in the country. And it's a result of the limitations around what load shedding has done, because it has narrowed the conversation essentially to adding new megawatts onto the grid. So I want to argue that there's a bigger conversation that we must have, and that bigger conversation speaks to the political economy of energy. So if you look at the role and place of energy in the global context, is that it constitutes the kernel of the discussions around if you like, economic diplomacy can be interpreted also in energy dimensions. The issues of the weaponization of energy in many parts of the world has become one of the dominant conversation, but also it can be used as an instrument to ensure that you penalize those who don't agree with you. So I'm saying that it's important that we have an appreciation that the conversation is much deeper than just having a discussion on load shedding. So what are we doing in the country? So ideally, every country must have what I call an economic policy. So this is an overarching approach or framework on how you want to develop the country. I'm simplifying a complex question. For purposes of time, I will not dwell much on that. And then this economic policy will then be anchored on an industrial policy and an energy policy, amongst others. So when you have a conversation around an industrial policy, it's not an end in itself, it's a means to an end, because you would have articulated the broader vision of what constitutes your economic policy. And then on the dimension of energy policy in the country, we take the approach of what we call an integrated energy plan that has got 3 legs. So the first one is the integrated resource plan. It answers 3 questions. So it talks about first, what are the implications of the energy sources that are going to power, if you like, your demand going into the future, to meet current demand and future projected demand. The assumption is that you would have generated scenarios of growth, and on the back of that scenarios, you'll then say this is the kind of generation that must meet that demand. And then you answer the question around the environmental implications, and then you answer the questions around the affordability of the choices that you are making. So that is the IRP. And then it also gets to be supported by your gas master plan. So essentially you ask the questions, if we are in a position to exploit any domestic endowments of gas. And we know that we are confronted with adversarial approaches from, if you like, those who cloak themselves as environmentalists, but principally they are opposed to our right, our sovereign right to exploit our own endowments. And unfortunately, we have given them the levers to do exactly that. And my view is that we must counter that, because it's in our collective interest that we are able to exploit our own endowments because of national security and our ability to meet our own demands going forward. Otherwise, we'll be exposed. Like recently, there's been shown that a lot of our gas is coming from Mozambique. If there's degree of instability, it can immediately wipe out 5% of the country's GDP. So it's in our collective interest that we address that. And then the third leg of the integrated energy plan is our petroleum resources. Comrade Mantashe will speak to that. And then in the course of that conversation, you must answer a number of issues. So unfortunately, the conversation in the energy space is about emissions. I argue that that's just but one element of the many that requires consideration. So there are issues of affordability. So when you talk about energy access, you know that we have an ambition of achieving universal access. It must have two dimensions. It must be available, so we are resolving the load shedding question, and then we know there's downstream challenges of load reduction. So we know that it's not available to everyone. It's got new manifestations of load reduction. I'll leave the technical definitions to some other conversation because of the limitation of time. And then it must be affordable. So you have a situation where a number of communities are experiencing energy hunger. Yesterday we were in Drakenstein municipalities. Communities were telling me that they can only afford 15 days of electricity. They can only pay for that. And they are in the dark for another 15 days. So it's the energy, electricity is being generated, but it's not affordable to the poor in the main or low-income households. So you must resolve that question. And that's why the exploitation of your own endowments is important. And then the one area I want to underscore there, it's about your ability to industrialize on the back of these transitions. So this is not a neutral conversation. This is a biased conversation on the need for us, as we exploit these natural endowments, we must build an industry behind that. And I'll show you what you can do on the transmission side, what you can do on the reforms that you are going to introduce on the electricity distribution side, that it presents new avenue, pristine opportunities for us to industrialize on the back of this transition. So we think that there are 5 areas that we must focus on as the department in the 7th administration. So the first one is that of universal access. So there's still about 7 percentage points of households that don't have access to electricity in this country, 30 years into the life of the democratic project. So I think it's an indictment, I want to argue, a phenomenal achievement relative to where we at the point of the liquidation of a system that is universally categorized as a crime against humanity in 1994. We have made significant strides, but those strides are not sufficient because not everyone is connected to electricity generation. And of course, we must rethink this thing of connection because there's technology evolution. So you don't need to build backbone infrastructure, which is expensive. You can use your natural endowments, what we call behind-the-meter interventions, to ensure that you are able to achieve this access. It must be affordable, reliable, and of great quality. And then there are issues of exploiting our endowments. So one of the things that we are understating is what I call, if you're to do what I call an irradiation atlas, just trying to understand the quality of the sun. So by quality, I mean the number of days that we have the sun in this country, the number of hours that we have the sun in a day, the number of hours that we have the sun in the day, and the intensity of that sun. And you arrive at some computation called an irradiation atlas, and you have to map it. The best quality of irradiation in the Northern Cape, in Chile, and the Australian outback. So that's a significant endowment. That's not below the ground. That's something that God has given to us. And of course, we have a significant amount of real estate. So we have to super exploit those endowments to help us to pivot in relation to the energy mix as we maintain that, if you like, base load of coal, nuclear, and hydro going forward. I spoke about industrialization and the need for us to elevate the contribution of women and youth in the energy complex. So that's something that has not received attention. and the need for us to be able to connect with the rest of the continent. And maybe just to make the following 2 points, 2 slides. The one is that it is in our interest to ensure that for us to achieve this prosperity, that we must protect the position of Eskom. I'm making that part without subtracting from the reforms that we have made. So the introduction of new players on the generation side, the upside of that is that there's going to be competition, likely going to be investment in R&D, the upskilling of participants in that space, and as the classics will put it, the expectation is that you'll bring down the cost of electricity over a period of time. It will not be immediate. So that's fine. So the president has put in place the amendments which have come into force the 1st of January of this year. But when all else fail, we are going to rely on Eskom to be the supplier of last resort. So essentially, Eskom is a backstop. So it's in our interest that we must be able to protect it. So that's the point I'm making. Of course, it must be an efficient provider. So I'm not absolving it of its responsibility to make sure that it's an efficient provider. But also, Eskom will cater for the poor. So those who are new participants on the generation, they have no interest of meeting the electricity demand of the poor because it's not commercially viable. So the state can't be retrenched. The state has got a duty to protect the poor and ensure that we reduce the cost of electricity. But we also are meeting our obligations, as we have stated it in the NDP, to ensure that there's a certain quantum that we give for free for the poor so that they can be able to meet their needs. So Eskom is important. What this slide shows, first, is the reality of today. 84% of electricity generation is coal. So when someone says to us that abandon coal, essentially the person is saying to you that collapse the South African economy. You don't have a coal problem, you have an emissions problem. And there's new technology that you can fire ammonia with coal and you reduce the adverse impact to the quality of the air and also reduce the CO2. So technology has advanced, so we can co-fire coal and ammonia and continue to exploit coal as our natural endowment, and therefore coal must be characterized as a critical mineral. We are not about to abandon it. So if the intention was to abandon it, I think you are in the wrong room. We will not abandon it. It's part of the energy mix going into the future, but there's also an admission that there's going to be an exponential increase of renewables. And you see by 2035, you will say your base load of coal, 34%. And then there's going to be gas to power initiatives, 16% of electricity generation. And then the important point, 12% of that share relative to the current 4% of that share of 76 gigawatts of electricity generation will come from nuclear. So there's been significant technology improvement, small modular reactors, that makes it very agile and location agnostic in relation to how you can exploit nuclear to meet your own energy demand. And that's going to be the complex of the energy mix going into the country, and that talks to the prosperity that we have been referring to. This is a slide that Comrade Pemi was referring to, the challenges with regards to municipalities being able to pay Eskom. That amount is sitting, the debt at 95 billion rands. But what is less spoken of is the amount of money that is owed to municipalities by customers, and that money sits, that debt sits at about 340 billion rands. So many of you, where you are seated, you are seeing a problem. Where I'm standing, I'm seeing a massive opportunity on how you can restructure your electricity distribution industry to make municipalities sustainable, secure their revenue streams, allow Eskom to continue as a going concern, and for Eskom to reinvest in its asset base and ensure that we are able to get that electricity. So it's important that we are able to ensure that we look at the new generation capacity technologies to make it possible for us to generate electricity cheaper, more reliable, and cleaner going into the future. And in fact, there's a pilot we are working on in 2 villages in Limpopo. In the next 60 days, we are going to unveil it. Just a perfect illustration of what we can do when we are confronted with a crisis of energy poverty and affordability. So we don't see that as a problem, but we see it as an opportunity to think differently on how you can resolve this problem going into the future. And then the last slide here, it's about, I've spoken about universal access. It's about transmission. So one point that is not stated sufficiently in the public domain, for reasons that I will not mention here, is that when there's a greater penetration of renewables into the grid, it's a threat to the stability of the grid. And the fact that we need 319 billion rand for us to expand and modernize the grid is to accommodate new generation capacity. This capital investment will not be necessary if we were not pursuing the ambition of ensuring that we are bringing on stream new generation capacity from renewable energy resources. And therefore, your computation of the cost of onboarding renewables must take into account the backbone infrastructure that is needed for you to be able to onboard it into the grid, and therefore the configuration on the cost of what renewable is relative to the cost of coal and nuclear, you'll see that gap is closing. But that conversation is not happening because it's convenient to remove the conversation on the expansion of the grid as a minimum and necessary requirement for you to be able to onboard renewables. I was talking to His Excellency, the Ambassador of Vietnam. I went to Vietnam just to try and understand how they've been able to introduce incentives, and over a period of a year, the Vietnamese were able to add an additional 8,000 megawatts on the grid on the back of a rooftop solar solution. When I met with my Vietnamese counterpart, he says, yes, we have achieved a lot, but you must be careful, my friend. The grid is unstable as a result of this intervention. And he says, if I had an opportunity, I'll do it different. I'll still do it, but do it differently and account for the cost associated with grid expansion. But the opportunity there, as I conclude, is our ability to industrialize on the back of the biggest capital rollout program of a democratic era. I say that is in proportions of about 390 billion rand. So we have been able to map what are the components that must support this transmission expansion, and we must ensure that we industrialize on the back of this, and we fundamentally alter the economic relations of society by ensuring that there's greater participation of black players in this space. And then we'll look at the bespoke financing solutions, because the ESCOM balance sheet is weak, will not support a capital expansion of 390 billion rand. The sovereign balance sheet is compromised for reasons that are known to us. So we must find bespoke financing solutions to make sure that we are able to achieve this. And the Brazilians have done it. The Chileans have done it. So this is not a novel project. So we're not doing something that has not been done before, but we are simply domesticating it and giving it South African characteristics. It will be nuanced to meet our own ambitions. And that which is unique about us is to ensure that there's a fundamental alteration of the economic relations of society, and black people must have a stake in that. And that's why I'm saying the idea of solidarity, equality, and sustainability viewed in an energy lens, we are able to answer many of those questions, but we need to think differently. And in so doing, we will be able to harness energy diversity and achieve a national unity and prosperity. Thank you very much, Comrade Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Nelson Mandela once said, a good heart and a good head are always formidable combination. But when you add to that a literate tongue and pen, then you have something very special. I think we have something very special in this minister. Thank you very much. I will now hand over to my
Thank you so much, CEO. I've got the privilege of calling on our next speaker. Being a young man myself who was born and raised in Umbumbulu in KZN, I just happened to have then worked in the Western Cape. It's with pride that I introduce Dr. Unobuhle Pamela Nkabane. This young lady, and I say it with pride because in Zulu City, in Kabayami, so my roots, where I come from, is in KZN. And she is a product of not only the youth activism in that province, but also the academic excellence that she comes with. She's got a PhD that she got from the University of KZN. She is known on the streets and in the boardrooms of KZN. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Nkabane, the Minister of Higher Education and Training.
Thank you so much, program directors of the session. I'm going to acknowledge the ministers present, the ambassadors present, and most in particular, the person who invited us to be part of the session today, the Treasurer General of the African National Congress, Dr. Gwen Ramokgopa. I'm told you also have ambassadors and guests from all over the world. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm very pleased to be part of this diverse portfolio today. I have been given a responsibility to talk about collaborative innovation in higher education, building a stronger future together, which then takes us to one of the quotations that Minister Mantashe loves. We used to have strategic planning sessions when I was still the Deputy Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy, and the quotation is by Peter Drucker. It says, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast, and it eats transformation for lunch," which then translates to the fact that we need to, from time to time, do an introspection, review our strategies, and come up with strategies that are responsive to the needs of our society. Comrades, allow me to first outline 4 critical global issues that have a huge impact on our domestic approach to development. This collaborative innovation must respond directly to domestic challenges such as unemployment, inequality, and poverty, while taking into consideration this global context. Minister Ramokgopa spoke about some of the challenges that we are facing as far as energy security is concerned. He also unpacked energy trilemma, speaking about issues of access, speaking about affordability, speaking about quality as well as sustainability. So what then requires from our side as various social partners is to make sure that we then respond to mission-oriented innovating finances. All of us, we need to be on board, come up either with direct financing or additional financing for us to be in a position to respond to socio-economic challenges that our country is facing. Comrades, human race faces a constantly changing world that is influenced by a number of factors. I'm going to cite a few: global wars and viruses, immigration, climate change, and natural disasters, as well as rapid technological advances, which then requires that we need to keep abreast of all the technological developments that are taking place globally, so that as a country we are going to be indeed competitive. South Africa is not immune to these challenges and changes. In fact, it has its own well-known triple challenges affected by these global factors: the high unemployment rate, the poverty, as well as widening inequality. Those who are academics here, because I've seen a number of them, we understand that recent studies have revealed that South Africa has become the most unequal society in the world, which then requires all of us to sit together and see what interventions can we bring on board to close the gap that we are facing or to address the challenge of widening inequality. These global changes present an unprecedented opportunity for the world to build a common future for humanity and global civilization that is characterized by prosperity, peace, and stability. What we should understand, dignitaries, is that it is impossible to talk about the future of education without imagining what the future will look like in the digital world. Other countries are already in advanced stages on the argumentative discourse on digital education, of which as the African countries we have to rethink our education system, both the teaching part of it as well as the learning part of it, in order to then expand access as well as success. Hence, in 2009, the government in South Africa took a decision that they need to reshape or change the shape and size of the PSET system by integrating the part of training into higher education, of which we need to also make sure that as much as we come up with interventions of skills revolution, but we need to also improve as far as access and success. There must not be a training for the sake of training. We must train, but there should be a clear exit strategy or pathways to our young people who are in training. Hence, we understand that currently, as the country was sitting at 3.4 million of young people who are under net, which is not in any employment, not in any education, not in any training, which then requires the industry to come on board and come up with some interventions which must be then financed by government together with the industry on how best then do we respond to that challenge that we are facing as the country. In South Africa, we have initiated several partnerships aimed at enhancing digital literacy and skills development. And these initiatives are designed to integrate technology into our educational practices, ensuring that our learners are not only consumers of technology, but also creators and innovators. It then says we need to also try by all means to instill a culture of ambition, to instill a culture of critical thinking for them to begin to be innovators. Allow me to then briefly explain the broader concept of innovation. What we need to understand is that it starts with ideation, where there is an element of critical thinking, where you come up with an idea and say there is a socio-economic challenge that needs to be addressed. This is how it should be then addressed. Then it then moves to invention, either by creating a software by that particular person who came with an idea through ideation, either creating a device of a software which then is translated into creating a value to another person, because if you say you are creative, there must be a value addition to the next person. Then that results to innovation that gets to the market through commercialization. Then it means our focus must be on instilling a culture of ambition, a culture of critical thinking for our youngsters to be in a position to be come up with some inventions, as well as creating some devices, or also ideation, which then results to innovation. But the innovation that we want is the innovation that is going to get to the market through commercialization. In post-school education and training sector, collaboration and innovation are important for addressing global challenges, improving student funding and learning, as well as fostering academic excellence. It allows students to work together to create knowledge and achieve shared learning goals, and scholars consider collaborative learning to be a promising instructional approach in the current competitive global environment. The globe, dignitaries, is transitioning from high to low carbon economy as my colleague has actually alluded on. And then what we need to understand is that the debate itself is dominated in terms of renewable by PV solar power, rechargeable batteries, as well as wind. It is well known that coal-fired power plants still account to 85% of South Africa's energy mix. As per our IRP 2019, I'm told they are in a process of reviewing it. There is going to be, or already it is there, IRP 2024. Comrades, renewable energy and battery storage requires more than 10 times mineral input compared to traditional fossil fuel energy systems such as the coal-fired power plants. This has led to global demand for critical minerals, of which we do have in the country, and Minister Mantashe is going to speak broadly on this aspect. South Africa is endowed with critical minerals such as copper, graphite, lithium, and manganese, to name a few. To be exploited, the new global industrial development, just energy transition, and technological advancement are all dependent on the mineral wealth of the African continent. We need to also make sure that we don't just export our minerals, we need to also make sure that there is industrialization as well as localization and beneficiation within the country in our interventions as we move forward. The country is investing in mineral exploration through the Junior Exploration Fund of these critical minerals, led by the Council for Geosciences, as well as Industrial Development Corporation, led by my two ministers present here, Minister Pakstow as well as Minister Mantashe. We need the industry to be on board and see how best can we then tap into this opportunity. The Department of Higher Education and Training's role is to develop highly competent, innovative, skilled, ethical, enterprising, and patriotic human capital that will drive value addition of these minerals in future of our development and prosperity. This will not be the first time, comrades, let me remind you, based on the early research and development work on spinel type lithium manganese cathode materials, South Africa pioneered the development of low-cost and less toxic rechargeable lithium-ion batteries as the most promising energy source to power the plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, portable electronics, and power tool equipments. Minister Ramakgopa is leading the Just Energy Transition Interministerial Committee that is looking at this. And as the Department of Higher Education and Training, we have been given a responsibility to look at the skills portfolio around the just energy transition in the country. And it's safe to say that we have collaborated with Chinese to send a number of students to go and study in China around these areas that are in demand in our industries and that are in demand in our economy. Allow me then to reflect on few interventions or successful programs that we came up as the PSET sector. MQA and Mintech have collaborated to provide accredited training to more than 300 small-scale miners in the Free State Northwest as well as Mpumalanga in the year 2024 to 2025. And then Fiber Processing and Manufacturing Sector Education and Training Authority collaborated with the following institutions of higher learning: the Stellenbosch University International Online Wood App, created for the first time, offering timber frame building course to capacitate building professionals and students in wood construction. This program has benefited 15,000 users with 100,000 websites engagements recorded. Also, this Fiber Processing and Manufacturing Sector Education and Training Authority had partnered with Forestry South Africa's innovative forestry virtual reality chainsaw operator technology, working with the industry partners inspired by CETA's International Leadership Program that partnered with Institute of Technology. Then the trainee chainsaw operators have a chance to test the skills they have learned in the classroom in virtual forest. There is another project that we embarked on, which is Richmond Indaleni Innovation Skills Center in partnership with Umgugundlovu TVET College and the Methodist Church, where we delivered a groundbreaking innovation hub in the deep rural, offering 3D printers, a laser cutting machine, a resin printer, Apple Mac mini computers for design purpose, drone technology, business-related robotics learning, and immersive virtual reality integrated learning. To date, we can safely say that 4,000 learners have benefited out of this program. Additionally, M2A formed partnership with the Transport Education and Training Authority and Chemical Industries Education and Training Authority to construct the Green Hydrogen Center specialization. I know Dr. Ramokgopa, this project is very close to his heart. As the PSET sector, we continue to recognize the energy transition as one of the key change factors influencing the energy skills development strategy through SETAs, including the Energy and Water Sector Education Training Authority. And energy transition skills development has seen substantial funding contributions that focus on the subsectors of hydrogen, energy efficiency, renewable energy, as well as associated fields. By giving resources to workers, women, and communities most impacted by the energy transition, the department itself and the PSET sector generally emphasizes the just aspect of the transition. Energy and Water SETA and CSIR Energy Research Center has launched the Energy Industry Support Program to help SMMEs in the energy industry value chain with technological development. In order to promote industrialization through localization, the initiative has also encouraged technological innovations. The department has partnered with trade unions and energy sector companies to provide upskilling initiatives to workers with focus on areas like information technology, project management, and recognition of prior learning, helping workers, particularly in the mining and coal-based sectors, adapt to new industry demands. We also partner with the industry to provide opportunities in rural contexts, significantly improving access to demand-led skills development nationwide. What we need to do working closely with the industry is to map the skills needs of the country, identify skills and occupations in high demand. And since Minister Ramokgopa spoke about coal, there's an article that I read of which I want to challenge academics to look at it. It was then, the research was conducted in Taiwan. The title is From Black Gold to Tech Marvel, Coal's New Role in Electronics. It was last year when it was then published. The paper itself says coal is directly linked to cutting edge of microelectronics, which then says what Minister Ramokgopa has indicated is that coal is not nuisance, it is not going to be a nuisance, it is the future. So we need to also see how best do we invest in research and development as far as the potential of coal is concerned in the just energy transition debate. I hope that the panel discussion will enhance the essence of this conversation further by helping us to unlock the interface between post-school education and training, poverty eradication, employment, and innovation. This is critical as we explore the opportunities that the industry has to offer in our efforts to foster collaboration and drive meaningful change. Thank you so much for having me, program directors, as well as attendees in this colloquium. Thank you.
Minister, I have hope in future when I see young ministers who show such formidable leadership qualities. Thank you so much. Please give her another round of applause. We have some challenges with time because we need to finish and be ready for the evening. And we still have some sessions where we need to make sure there's an opportunity for question and answer. So I want to say that when I was still very active in addressing conferences, I used to go to Harvard University has a biannual conference, and I used to fly from South Africa all the way to Boston to speak for 5 minutes, and I complained. And they said to me, the human mind can only concentrate for 5 minutes. So 15 minutes is a lot of time if we have to comprehend and remember. So I'm going to ask my next two speakers to come to my rescue. I know we have 20 minutes, Minister Gwede and Minister Tau. So I'm going to ask for 15 minutes. Just, if you can just buy me 5 minutes each, I'll appreciate that. Thank you so much. May I please call upon Honorable Minister Gwede Mantashe. And I know he's very time conscious. That's why I'm saying this. I know he's capable. He's going to help me. I thank you so much. Please welcome him.
Thank you very much, program directors, everybody in the house. Thank you. We can also see our colleagues from Palestine. Thank you that you are still surviving. Honorable ministers present here, I'm telling all of them that I'm now entering the death age. Biblically, 70 is the death age. Anything beyond 70 is a bonus. I'm entering that age, and I'm working with young ministers, very energetic, full of information in their head. I'm happy about that. I was told to talk about Sovereign Wealth Fund. Is that what I'm talking about? Sovereign Wealth Fund. Okay, I'm with Parks. Sovereign Wealth Fund, what is it? What is this thing called? Sovereign Wealth Fund. Let's start from there, because we talk about it as if we all understand what it is. I'm calling it the saver of the state of last resort. When there is a crisis, you invoke your Sovereign Wealth Fund if you are a wise state. You put money aside, you invest it, you grow it, for it to be used when there is a crisis. It's not a budget, it's a sovereign wealth fund. And the debate to me is a little bit tired, because we've been having this debate for years. What should we do? And for many years we've agreed that we need a sovereign wealth fund here. We're a developing economy, we're not a developed economy. We need a sovereign wealth fund, but general agreement, but no implementation. Now, I will have to point fingers at somebody for this. Two, what can we contribute? I mean, mineral and petroleum, very important department. You could hear every minister speaking here refers to this department. It's quite central, very important. This department will contribute to the Sovereign Wealth Fund. It can contribute to the Sovereign Wealth Fund. For example, we have royalties that are paid per mineral. Royalties are paid per mineral, and those royalties have no specific tax responsibility. They are put to the treasury, they disappear into the fiscus, but they come from minerals. They are charged per mineral category. Coal, gold, platinum, every mineral pays royalties to the state. And in 2023, those royalties contributed about 29 billion rand to the fiscus. If we took that 29 billion rand, start a sovereign wealth fund, and take that money every year and develop a sovereign wealth fund, I can tell you in 10 years' time we'll have quite a decent sovereign wealth fund. The issue is that we must start. Number two, we've passed a law on oil. And we say every oil discovery, 20% will go to the state. Okay? It's given. is given to the state. Once you discover oil, it doesn't matter what company you are, 20% of that discovery will go to the state. That is another tax that will go to the state that has no defined responsibility in the state, and we must use it, part of it, if it's not all of it, part of it for the sovereign wealth fund. And a state that is keen to develop a sovereign wealth fund can determine other taxes and forms of revenue that can be used for sovereign wealth fund. In my own view, this thing depends more on the decision of the state than is it a problem. I'm making a submission that two people are key to this decision, Minister Parks. Two people, the President and the Minister of Finance, that are key to this decision. We have agreed, we have submitted to them, these are the contributions we are going to make. The President and the Minister of Finance must agree that we'll sacrifice part of the revenue that we generate for a sovereign wealth fund for our rainy days, because they will be there. We come across them all the time. I'll give you one example about that. So money is not a problem for a sovereign wealth fund. I'm making that submission. The problem is lack of boldness in taking the risk, and we need to accept that some amount is readily going to the fiscus must be saved for rainy days. We take that decision consciously, we take the risk, and if it reduces the fiscus for immediate consumption, we do that, but we must take that risk. Therefore, the issue is the lack of boldness in taking the risk. During the COVID, for example, the price of petroleum was going up aggressively. We took a decision to cushion the citizen of that increase. We sold strategic stock of petroleum. We have strategic stock. We sold it. We reduced tariffs to the end user. And that, to me, those are the risks that must be taken care of by the sovereign wealth fund if it works. So it's easier to use it when there's a crisis than to scramble around and tamper with many. So my submission, Minister Tau, is simple. That decision, we're agreeing, all of us, on it. It must be implemented. That's my submission. Sovereign wealth fund is not a luxury, it's a need, and we need it urgently. We don't need it now, we need it tomorrow. We need tomorrow, because this crisis is going to visit us from time to time. And when there's an agreement, who must take the decision? We have agreed at cabinet level on this matter. Okay, we've made offers of these contributions at cabinet level. And I'm sure once it is started, other ministries will offer money that it can go to the sovereign wealth fund. And the state can dedicate certain taxes to the sovereign wealth fund and start it. And therefore my submission is that pressure must be mounted on us as the government to implement the sovereign wealth fund. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to the National Chairperson of the ANC, Honorable Minister Mqwati. Siyabonga, siyabonga baba. It gives me a great privilege to be able to introduce our next speaker, a minister who over the years I've worked with closely. He is known as Mr. Economic Development in this country. You cannot speak economic development in any province and not have the name of a few people come up. He's one of those few people who are synonymous with economic development. He's got a track record that spans through the years. I'm not going to read everything. He was mayor of the city of Johannesburg. He was MEC a number of times, deputy minister as well. But at this moment in time, the country is entrusting him with being able to transform our trade and industry. And in that, as the Minister of Minerals Resources is speaking about the Sovereign Wealth Fund, it becomes integral that whatever we do in terms of the industrialization of the country and making sure that the country becomes more effective and efficient in terms of the work and what happens, I really think that Minister Pakstau is going to be at the forefront of that along with all the other ministers. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce to yourself Mr. Honorable Minister Pakstau.
Thank you very much to our program directors, comrades, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to rise on protocols already observed, cognizant of the time constraints as has been indicated by the program directors. It is indeed a great privilege and an honor to address you today as South Africa assumes the presidency of the G20 for the 2025 term. This presidency comes at a pivotal moment for the world, punctuated by escalating geopolitical tensions, worsening climate-related challenges, fragmented global supply chains, and deepening economic inequalities. These polycrises also present opportunities for us to collectively seize and chart a transformative course. I was asked by our host to reflect on the opposite theme of fostering solidarity, equality, and sustainable development through the G20 platform. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa is the second fastest growing region in the world after Asia, stands at the forefront of this transformative moment. Blessed with abundant natural resources, 60% of the world's unused arable land, a young and dynamic population, and a burgeoning middle class, Africa's potential is undeniable. Yet the continent accounts for a mere 3% of global trade, which is a stark reminder of our historical reliance on exporting raw commodities and importing value-added goods. For Africa, achieving structural transformation is not just a necessity, but an existential imperative. We must shift from a growth model based on raw material exports to one grounded in industrialization, value addition, and sustainable development. Dear colleagues, in 2023, the G20 was made up of 19 countries plus the European Union, consisting of 27 member states. Fast forward to 2024, the African Union, consisting of 55 member states, joined the G20 as a permanent member. We'll thus use the presidency to amplify Africa's voice on the global stage. The transition to a low-carbon economy and the ever-expanding digital economy offer unique opportunities for mineral-rich developing nations. Critical minerals essential for clean energy and digital technologies such as lithium for electric vehicles and selenium for solar panels are poised to see demand triple by 2030 and quadruple by 2040. For Africa to benefit equitably, beneficiation and value addition must take place at source. However, historical patterns of extraction without local value addition persist. To address this, African governments must, 1, invest in infrastructure and industrial policies to enable local processing of minerals. 2, develop cross-border partnerships that equitably share the benefits of value addition. And 3, build the technological and human capital needed for beneficiation and industrialization. Ladies and gentlemen, South Africa's presidency of the G20 provides a platform to champion these issues and bridge the global divide. The G20, as the premier forum for international economic cooperation, has a unique responsibility to address the challenges of our time, including reforming global governance to ensure fairer trade rules and meaningful participation of developing nations. Advancing the Sustainable Development Goals, where only 12% of the targets are currently on track. And strengthening international cooperation to mitigate climate risks and promote green industrialization. We believe that trade and climate policies must be mutually supportive, ensuring that resource-rich countries benefit equitably while maintaining global supply chain integrity. Under our presidency, we'll focus on 4 key priorities to drive inclusive and sustainable growth. The first is with relation to trade and investment growth. We aim to develop principles and address the adverse distributive effects of trade. A key outcome will be the G20 Africa Cooperation Agenda, promoting intra-Africa trade and industrialization through the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Secondly, responsive trade and investment agenda. Through addressing global commons such as energy and digital transitions, we will identify trends in the investment treaty regime and propose reforms to ensure equitable outcomes. Thirdly, with regards to green industrialization and investment, we will advocate for a G20 framework promoting value addition of critical minerals near their sources and the development of low-carbon manufacturing value chains to support global decarbonization. And the fourth, with regards to the reform of the WTO, we will prioritize the development dimensions of the WTO with the goal of issuing a statement on the WTO reform that ensures inclusivity and supports the industrialization ambitions of developing nations. As matters stand, South Africa's G20 presidency coincides with a number of positive developments that includes, but are not limited to, the first, of course, relates to the extended period of time where we have had no load shedding and improved performance as indicated by Minister Ramokgopa. We are witnessing improved business and consumer confidence at levels that are at a 5-year high, an upward revision of South Africa's GDP growth forecasts, and ratings agencies' revision of South Africa's outlook from stable to positive. By the end of our G20 presidency and beyond, these developments, including the successful implementation of the country-specific G20 focus areas, should bode well for potential economic impact. Ladies and gentlemen, as South Africa assumes the G20 presidency, we commit to fostering solidarity, equality, and sustainability. This is our call to action to break the cycle of commodity dependence, to champion the African agenda, and to reform the multilateral system to create fairer global order. Our efforts will build on the work of previous presidencies with a specific focus on the unique challenges and opportunities facing the Global South. We must remember that with less than 6 years remaining to achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals, time is of the essence. This is not a moment for empty promises, but for decisive action. Ladies and gentlemen, South Africa is ready to lead with vision and determination, ensuring that the G20 becomes a catalyst for transformative change. Together, let us realize a future of shared prosperity, equality, and sustainability for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Minister Tau. We will then ask, we were tempted to go for a 5-minute body break. However, looking at the time, we thought maybe we can try and include one more session or two in order for us to try and kill some time. So I'm going to humbly request that the ministers remain on stage. We're going to call on the moderator for the first panel discussion. If we can have the moderator, Avuyile Kabandia, to be able to come up on stage, please. And whilst the moderator makes their way onto stage, is Avuyile here? If you can just indicate with show of hand, the moderator, Avuyile, are you here? Okay, it looks like Avuyile is not here. Maybe they've stepped out. We will then deal with the second panel. If we've got Prof. Mziwa Banzi. Prof, are you with us here today? If you can make your way onto stage, Prof, please. As Prof makes his way onto stage, Prof is the CEO of the National Nuclear Regulator. Amongst the accolades that he does have, the session that Prof will be moderating is a session on harnessing energy diversity for national unity and prosperity. Prof?
Thank you.
Over to you.
I think the minister is speaking.
The minister is done. She's spoken. Okay. Thank you very much, program directors. Maybe I must correct the title before I get fired. I'm not the CEO of the National Nuclear Regulator. I am the former CEO, and I am currently the Vice Chancellor of the Northwest University. I would like to thank the organizers, the host, for inviting me to moderate this panel, which I believe forms part of other very important topics that will be discussed and has already been discussed in this colloquium. I'm saying it forms part of them because the proverbial nexus of water, energy, and environment remains one of those issues that must keep governments, especially governments in developing countries, sleepless. I'm happy that the Minister, Comrade Sputler, has touched on a number of very important issues to remind us of the South African policy direction as far as energy is concerned. He spoke of a balanced energy mix as advocated in the IRP. I thought I should as well pave way for our esteemed panelists, put a few pointers on the table just to give a perspective. One of the very gloomy headlines we've been reading over the past few days is the decision by ArcelorMittal, the steel giant, to cut thousands of jobs. Among other reasons advanced for this is weak economic growth, high logistics and energy costs, influx of low-cost steel imports, particularly from China, among other reasons. Whether we want to believe that statement or not is up to us, but figures and facts don't lie. The supply of reliable, cheap energy is inextricably linked to a sustained growth of the economy. To illustrate this point further, let us look at the economic growth of Germany, the biggest economy in Europe. In 2019, their GDP growth rate was 1%, followed by a significant reduction of minus 4.1% in 2020, due to the pandemic, of course. They rebounded in 2021 with 3.7% growth, and then slowed down to 1.7% in 2022. Unfortunately, the growth rate declined further to minus 0.3 in 2023. Let's leave it at that. What the reasons for that are is up to any analyst to decide. But again, facts don't lie. The German economic model relies heavily on its manufacturing sector. For example, their fledgling automotive industry. Traditionally, they imported cheap gas from Russia for their manufacturing sector, then export the products worldwide. What happened between 2022 and 2023, when you now see a decline from growth of 3.7 to minus 0.3%, the war in Ukraine started. Then the gas or energy wars started between Europe and the Russian Federation. The days of cheap gas basically fizzled out. And the German industries, and dare I say, thousands of domestic users felt a terrible bite. With that, I would like to pause it once again, that any talk of economic revitalization and revival is cheap talk unless it takes care of, among other things, energy security of supply, affordability of electricity, and most importantly, reliability thereof. This means serious public investments in energy infrastructure project is needed. As we do so, the discussion of a balanced energy generation mix comes to the fore, as Minister Sputler has already said. Questions emerge as to where the most investment in energy projects is channeled, and whether that really results in economic revitalization. Not simply just putting electrons on the grid, but indeed how the local industry benefits. And then there is that proverbial net zero or decarbonization commitments of ours. Simply put, we committed to reduce our carbon emissions to the zero net by 2050, basically, among other things, no longer building new coal-fired power plants, or at the very least, implementing advanced technologies to drastically reduce greenhouse gas emissions in our coal plants, as the minister has said. A very expensive retrofit, I must say. Of course, this is for very good reasons, because climate change and the need to preserve the planet for the generations to come. That said, can we afford to do away with coal? Minister Nkabani has already touched on that. Minister Sputler has touched on that. By the way, as of today, only 7 countries in the world currently have coal-fired plants under construction. China accounts for 95% of those. The other countries are India, Laos, Nigeria, Pakistan, Russia, and Indonesia. Additionally, 32 other countries have new coal projects at the pre-construction phase of development. Another interesting fact, since we now have assumed the G20 presidency as a country, more than half of the G20 countries have reduced their share of coal since the Paris Agreement. However, 11 G20 countries have not yet set their specific timelines for phasing down or out coal. In fact, in the United States, President-elect Donald Trump's transition team has made the US energy industry a focus of its plans for his first days in office. And analysts and experts already foresee a rollback of environmental regulations for coal and natural gas. What does it mean? Well, it may very well mean that the timelines and pressure for currently operating coal plants in the US may be reviewed and revised. But that's just my take. This brings us to the topical issue of the just energy transition, which again Minister Nkabani touched on. The panel, I'm sure, will also express itself on it. And lastly, once we have a good run in the rollout of our renewable energy projects, what then becomes our baseload generation source? The Honorable Minister Sputler told us a story about Vietnam. Many years ago, I had the opportunity to advise the Vietnamese government to deploy nuclear power plants in their country. they had agreed to put 4 nuclear power plants, 2 from Japan and 2 from the Russian Federation. Because of policy uncertainty, that program was scrapped, Minister Sputla. If they did, which was way back in 2014, by now, like us, they would have a very stable grid. But to help us grapple with all these questions today in my panel, I have retired Colonel Klein, Hilton Klein, chairperson of Numolux Group, which operates in the space of health and pharma, energy, mining, and minerals. Colonel, are you here? Please, can you come to the stage? We'll try to make it as short as possible. We also have Ms. Lilian Nomawetu Andreas, the founder and owner of Lisandau 911, which operates in construction and renewable energy since 2012. Nomawetu, are you here? Please come to the stage. We have Ms. Hushe Muleshe online, a highly accomplished energy and finance expert with over 26 years of experience in energy and infrastructure projects across sub-Saharan Africa. Ms. Muleshe, are you online? Can you hear us? And lastly but not least, Mr. Lucas Ramaila Dingan, the Managing Director of EdForce Pty Ltd, an energy entity which operates in the space of residential and commercial electrical systems in both high and low voltage with clients such as City Power and Eskom, amongst many. Colleagues, welcome to the panel. We have less than 30 minutes, I believe, to go through a number of questions. So let's start with you, Colonel. The TG, when she opened, made a statement that this problem of developing the country is not a problem for just men or women or young people or old people. It's a problem for all of us. Now, I want to add to say that developing energy infrastructure to ensure development is also a responsibility of not only government, but the private sector. But the question is, have we really built enough solid public-private partnerships locally in the country to enable the rollout of energy infrastructure? For example, in the United States and in Canada, there is a strong consideration of deploying small nuclear power plants to power the military bases that are in remote sites. Now, coming from the military experience, do you foresee that kind of partnerships, public-private partnerships, joining the private sector, joining hands with SANDF, for example, to power our remote military bases such as Luhatla and other places, to free up the other Eskom energy to power other important industrial sectors?
Thank you. Thank you very much. All protocol was observed. I just want to firstly congratulate the Minister of Energy. I think we are on 290 days without load shedding today. Amazing. Let's give him a hand. A promise was made and a promise was kept. And that is great. That is the future of South Africa. If we make promises to our people, we keep our promises like the Minister kept his promise. And that is made through public-private partnerships. That strengthens other countries, especially the US, Russia, that has in the energy sector partnerships with the private sector. And that's what makes the energy sector sustainable and successful. Of course, when it comes to public-private partnerships, I think the South African energy sector is ready, Minister, to partner with you. We've been waiting and waiting, and now is the time, because we know they've been busy with legislation, they've been busy with other processes, and very soon they will be ready to open up to the private sector and talk to us to get things going and to ensure that we keep load shedding out of our country, because that sustains investment. And when we look at infrastructure, that is what Moody's look like in particular to rate us. And if we can get our rating correct with Moody's and the others, we will not have challenges with investments. Because that drives, as Minister Parks-Tau said, that drives a country's economy. And we're looking forward to that as a private sector. Of course, with the military, and I know the military is already busy with specific provinces in partnering with the province, with the city, and with public partners, private sector partners, to sustain the military-based areas and the surroundings. Just imagine, definitely we will have a secure energy supply when the military comes in, and when there's facilities built on military institutions to supply to the grid. If military institutions use that extra power that they generate to supply to the city, we won't have any challenges, we won't have any problems. And we know the military can easily use all types of capabilities, whether it's in a container to deliver to a rural area or any other area, the military can do that. There's also other projects that will sustain renewable energy as well, that I know of, that can be discussed. But I've got other partners around the table that can also add to what I'm saying.
Yes, thank you very much. Ms. Andreas, the capacity of the country to execute mega energy projects is always a question. Now, mega energy projects, I'm a nuclear engineer. I always look at mega energy projects at the scale of a nuclear power plant, which takes 7 to 10 years to construct. Do we have the capacity? Especially looking at Medupi and Kusile construction projects and how they have been such a nuisance to complete. Can we confidently say we can roll out mega energy projects that will revitalize the economy?
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm Lalina Andreas. I'm from Carnarvon in the Northern Cape, in a town where we host 90 kilometers, the world's biggest science and technology project, the SKA. But coming back to the question, South Africa is actually more than ready. The reason being, despite the challenges that we have, South Africa have the capacity to easily adjust. In terms of energy projects, for any investor in here, South Africa does not come empty-handed to the table in terms of rollout and to do better. Kusile in Medupi. Kusile in Medupi has been developed in an era where South Africa's capacity has not really been taken historically into consideration. Since Medupi and Kusile, South Africa has grown multiple and massively in demand for electricity.